you sell a dream and you feel like a fraud when the person comes in, because quite quickly they realize they obviously have not walked into the dream you sold.
Oh, God. Wonderful for me to speak to Prashanti Mundree, who's an HR practitioner and HR generalist, and really also so passionate about employee well-being and psychological safety. And that's what brought us together today. So, Prashanti, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Very excited to chat.
All right. Well, this is, as you know, this is a whole program that Dr. Dineo and myself are running just to find out what is really going on in the coal space, in the actual heat of it in companies. And being the fact that you're in recruitment and also HR, you're going to have some interesting insights. So I'm just going to open the mic to you. What is the good, the bad, and the ugly in corporate South Africa around employee well-being and psychological safety?
Okay, great. I mean, there's a lot that comes to mind, not only in the company I'm in, but I think in companies I've worked in. So, if you go look at my background, I've pretty much played in the small to medium-sized companies within the tech space. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very good, in terms of like they're thinking about the way things are being done, that, not only here, but in like Silicon Valley, that's modeled after Google, Netflix, all those amazing books you read. So I've been very privileged to be in a company and work for companies like that, where, people matter is not just written on a wall, it's actually practiced. They actually care about their people, which is not something I've necessarily experienced before. In different spaces, it's been the complete opposite. It's been you sell a dream and you feel like a fraud when the person comes in, because quite quickly they realize they obviously have not walked into the dream you sold.
Oh, God, hold on. Sorry. Whoa. The recruiter or the manager sells the dream to get the employee hooked, and they arrive in and realize they've been sort of scammed, misled, misrepresented 100%. To get them in.
Yeah. And it happens all the time, right? And then what happens is you just got this revolving door. And then people sit around the table and discuss like, why is turnover so high, et cetera, et cetera. But you know exactly why it's so high. You've sold them a dream because you need them to come in immediately, ASAP, because the other person left. And knowledge just kind of keeps, also like a revolving door, it kind of just keeps exiting, right? Because you keep losing the knowledge you have and the people who've been trained. And unfortunately for the recruiter on the other side, that's the problem. You're sitting there and you kind of look like a clown, because now you're not only recruiting, but you're trying to have them engaged. You're trying to have morale up. You don't want them to leave, because then you have to recruit again, especially if you're not just a recruiter, but, an HRBP or a head of people like myself. Like that's what tends to happen, is you're now not only recruiting for the right person, you have to make sure that person stays, otherwise it's your KPIs down on the line. But unfortunately, if you are feeling like the fraud, and if unfortunately you're working at a company where it does kind of feel like you've sold the dream, somebody comes in, they're going to leave pretty soon. Your thing is just how long can you keep them happy for?
Wow, that's very powerful. And what's interesting is you're the first person who's actually targeting and saying the start of the relationship is actually the interview. We're talking typically about keeping the people once they're in, but you're saying, no, it actually starts before, and potentially to fill that KPI, you need to get the spot. You'll take anybody, so you'll sell this dream, which inadvertently could misrepresent. And then it's a matter of how long can I keep the person dreaming and believing the dream is real before they're eventually going to leave and I have to go all over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like how do you keep those like rose-tinted glasses on, and then it becomes up to you. It becomes up to the manager. Is the manager more in your court where they see this person as a person and it's a good manager? There's that saying, people don't leave bad places, they leave, bad managers. So sometimes you get lucky and you end up having a great manager that the person works under, and they stay a lot longer, even though maybe the company as a whole isn't great. And that's better. But, at the end of the day, if you've sold a dream, and if they're a team player and a an A player, they're not going to stay. Obviously, we want to hire A players, right? But if we're not breeding A players, and if it's not A players top down, bottom up, then A players are going to leave. They're not going to be the ones that just stay there for the next 5-10 years. So what then tends to happen is then the organization is filled with B or C players who need a job, happy staying there, maybe also form part of this workplace politics or toxicity. And all your A players tend to leave. And that is really the truth of the matter.
Sure. So, okay, here we go. Here's the key question. How do companies break outside of that cycle?
I think it starts from the top. If your management don't believe in it, you can't break out of the cycle, because they're going to keep hiring A players and they're not showing up for it. And that's really, it starts on the top. And I mean, I remember having a conversation with one of my bosses at the time at a different company. And I remember telling him, like, listen, we need to do more in terms of what the new generation wants. So like leave dates to relook at. We need to relook at our flexibility, our work-life balance, etc. Because I was kind of going down this thing that like Gen Zs, this is what they're looking for, right? And we know the organization now is made up of more generations than ever, but we also know that the last 2 generations are nearly fading out. So it's going to be Gen Zs and millennials in the next 10 years or so that are going to be part of this organization. And his response, sarcastic, but also very true, was just like, well, then we won't hire Gen Zs, will we? And that was his blatant response as a CEO to me coming in as an HR practitioner saying we need to relook at our structures, our processes, how, what we're doing in here to attract Gen Zs are now coming into the organization. He's just like, well, then we just don't hire Gen Zs. And I'm like, that mentality is not going to help you maintain, win people and keep them in.
Why would he say that? What do you think is the underlying reason for him actually bringing that forward and saying we're not going to hire those Gen Zs then?
I think it's the mentality. There is this unfortunate preconception, or I don't know how it's come about, but there is this thing where, unfortunately, he's part of one of the older generations, and they kind of see that bum on seat means work. If you're at the office, you're working. And I mean, we know from even school days, just because you're in the class for 6 hours does not mean you're working the whole time. Right. Same with work. Like, you're at work for 8 hours. Does that mean you're fully engaged and active and working for 8 hours straight? Probably not, unfortunately, because we're human. But for them, it means that like you're working. But I don't think they realize that you could send a working mom home at 3:00 to watch their kid at school, and they will work 3 hours later that evening or whenever they get a chance, and it will be more productive than them sitting there stressed about the fact that they can't watch their kid play soccer.
So, sorry for interjecting again here. So, are we dealing with fear? They don't want to change. That's the way that they've known. They were brought up. I'm that generation. You've got a job. Be grateful you've got a job. You get paid a salary. You're burning out. You're feeling stressed. Get over it. I pay you salary. Do your job or resign. Yeah. Now the Gen Zs are coming along going, but hold on a second. That's not the way that I want to work. I want to know that I'm seen, heard, and valued. 100%. And if you don't get me that, I'm going to go somewhere else. And these are the new A players. And if a company isn't changing the concept and the old, what is now outdated philosophy, I know what I was brought up with won't work now.
Yeah,
that's gone. But that means that company is going to become disconnected and left behind, because where's the new ideas coming from?
Yes.
Is it the old Jims in their 50s? Or the 20, 30, the Gen Zs?
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think, Tim, you hit the nail on the head when you said fear, and my initial response was actually change. And then you said fear of change. I'm like, that's exactly
fear of change. That's it. Yeah.
Fear of change. That's exactly it. And I can understand it to a point, but then, and what I said to my new boss when he hired me is I said, if that is the case, then don't hire me, because I will leave. If you are scared of change, and if you are trying to hire an A player who's going to come in and help you reach your strategy goals, the initiatives you set out, whatever it is, don't hire an A player who is going to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Right.
Because then don't hire me, because otherwise I'm going to leave after a year and a half, because it's going to feel like I've been hitting my head on a brick wall trying to make you understand why you should change, what's in it for you, how the business will succeed. But I don't want to have to keep motivating that when it's all out there for you to see and hear and think about. My job is to actually do that, not just keep telling you why you should do that. And I'm going to leave to somebody who's understands that already and gives me the foundation and the resources to do what we need to do.
So in fact, you're looking and saying, okay, company, when you're looking at employing some people, decide, do you want A players, B players, or C players? And then target those specifically. But don't go and look for an A player because you need new ideas, you need new vision, you need new implementation or changes, to then stifle them and say, but you're going to do it my way, or it's the highway. They say, well, don't bother employing me. Exactly what you say. I love that. Prashanti, is the way you're saying. So the company should turn around and go, no, we only want B players. It's fine. We accept B. We accept as you've said, the B's and C's end up by adding fuel to the issues in the company, to the negative culture, to the negativity that actually keeps the company there. Yeah. But if the company doesn't want innovation, hire B's and C's. Don't go for the A's.
And they're going to work great. There's nothing wrong with B and C players. It's that kind of like if you read Radical Candor, there's superstars and there's rock stars. And that's the philosophy. It's not to say that a rock star won't be there, solid, working. They're the people who will always be there and will be the person you're going to go to for something.
Yes.
For legacy, and that's amazing. You want a few of those people, but you don't only want those people. It needs to be a combination of both. But if you have too many of those legacy players, then the new people don't feel like they can innovate and share their ideas because it's stifled. It goes nowhere. No one wants to change. So they just end up exiting.
Now, this is very interesting how we're going down this direction when we're conversations around employee well-being and psychological safety. And you're identifying and saying, but it actually starts at the recruitment stage.
Yeah.
Goes back to the old saying, can't remember who wrote the book now, where you get the right people on the bus, then find the right seat for them in the bus, but get the right people on the bus in the first place. So if you're looking for a game changer, go for the A, but understand that they're going to challenge you, boss. And if you're not willing to be challenged because you fear of change, you're scared of becoming irrelevant, and that's a big thing in the C-suites at the top there, irrelevant, they can't connect anymore. If you're not willing for that, then go and employ the B's and the C's, because we need that stability, that groundwork where, yes, they're harder, they need more management. And is that where employee well-being comes in? Because if the A players are functioning and getting the attention and the freedom to implement, which is what they're there to do, they're connected to the values, they know why they're there, and psychological safety and employee well-being is not an issue.
Yes.
But it becomes an integral part of the need of the B's and the C's.
Yeah, definitely. It's exactly that. And I think also when you know what your workforce is made up of, for example, Gen Zs versus millennials versus boomers, etc., they have different values. And because they have different values, they have different ways in which they need psychological safety or crave it. Because they have different values, that's going to come in different forms. So they probably, the boomers, the people who are much older, have probably seen their kids who are now in the workforce wanting different things. So, for example, like they don't no longer want to go to their kids' games. Their kids are grown up.
Yes.
That was the past. They probably missed all their kids' games, but they moved on because that was the way things are. However, their kids now are looking for a place where they can go watch their kids' games, or even if you don't have a kid, right? Like the flexibility to go to gym either in the morning or the evening before rush hour gymming, or that kind of thing. Like we start work at 9, all our people, because they're quite younger, go to gym before. They can go to a gym class before, come to work, etc. We've got flexible times. They can leave at, 2-3 o'clock before rush hour, go home, finish up their day at home. And for them, that's going to create a different form of psychological safety, because we're not pinging them, asking them where they are, what they're doing. But then for the older person who's sitting at their desk from 9 to 6 and is pinging them and asking them where they are, they need this and they need that, and somebody's not responding, they need different things for their psychological safety.
Right. So we're looking at saying, okay, how do you get to the older generation and train the mindset and the understanding that this is the demand of them. And if you want to even get the Gen Zs, the Bs, you still got to change how you're managing them, and they're looking for that flexibility. They're still going to work, but it's more on their terms as opposed to just the one line, that's the corporate policy or culture, and if you don't like it, get out.
100%. You're going to treat working moms different to how you treat a person out of varsity or a graduate, to how you're going to treat somebody in their mid-20s or 30s who wants to maybe not have a kid and go on holiday every year.
Yes.
Those things are all different, but how you treat them is how it impacts their psychological safety. So
that's it. So now we're not only dealing with the generation gap, but we're dealing with the different needs within each generation.
Yes.
That they have. And so the dynamics actually get very vast. So you're saying there isn't a playbook. So Dr. Dineo and I are researching, and we're interviewing a lot of people from throughout Africa and also the UK and Europe as well to get a completely different perspective. But we're looking and saying, is there a playbook? Is there a rule that we can actually put this out and say, from all these people we've interviewed, follow this on to get really good connection with your people? But you're actually breaking it down even more detailed. You're putting it under a microscope and saying, but each generation, you got the Gen Z, some are moms.
Yeah.
You got the generation, some are single. You got the generation. So actually then the whole dynamics get spread. So how does a company, a corporate with thousands of people, which needs certain amount of structure and rules to operate, how do they manage all of this?
It's a tough one. I think, firstly, if you get the playbook, please share it, because I don't have the playbook, but I think what in my head I try to do, and what I try to do when I recruit and just in general, is create personas. So it's like one down from generations. It's what I was just saying, within the generation, right? You'll have within the Gen Z or the millennial, you'll have different personas. And that's really what you then start doing, is you create these personas, and then you see when you're hiring which persona this person would most likely fall in. And then you kind of have the playbook underneath that persona to help guide those conversations in one-on-ones, in performance reviews, in those kind of chats, in employee well-being situations, etc. And then I think you'd write the playbook based on the persona, not this overall playbook. I think you really have to narrow it down, in my opinion. You have to know, and you can't do it for the person, right? You said corporate for thousands of people. You can't sit there and get to know every single person as much as we'd love to. In my industry now I can, because my company is so small, but in corporate, that's how I would do it.
Right. Yeah. So this would be, as a recruiter as you are now, ensuring that you've got the correct directive from the company. Are you looking for an A, B, or C player? And breaking that down. Okay, now in that, what type of persona are you looking for, so that you're not just ticking the box, getting the commission, and then going, well, as long as the person stays there for a year, I don't have to pay them back, and then I can just go and re-recruit, and I've got like a rollover, a continuation of clients coming because the people are only going to last for a year. Not right. So you got to get the specifics. Love it. Got one last question for you. So if you had a magic wand, if you could influence one bold change within workplace culture, psychological safety, well-being within South Africa and the business environment that you know, what would that be?
Put in ahead of people, somebody really for the people on Manco. I think they really should be somebody for the people, and who can also play devil's advocate when I understand we're all here for a business, and without a business there's no people, and vice versa. But put in a head of people in, or a head of HR or whatever it is, with somebody for the people in Mango. No one is there talking about the people and is for the people, at least in my opinion, that I've noticed. You're there kind of for it, but you're not really for it. You're there for the business. But somebody who is passionate about the people.
Okay, so instead of a HR manager or the HR director, it's actually, you've got the HR, but the Manco is specifically, the head of people is specifically there for one sole reason, and that is the well-being and psychological safety of the people, and doesn't get caught up in the nitty-gritty of all the other things. They're there to ensure that the people are seen, heard, and valued, which is what the key things is, that which is all this about. That's very interesting. So we're actually having a look at the head of the organization having somebody focusing on what is actually the greatest asset within the business, because without the people, you have nothing.
100%.
Very interesting. Last words from you before we wrap up. This has been absolutely amazing. You've targeted some beautiful nuts and bolts here for me, some nuggets. Any last words of wisdom from you?
Oh, last words of wisdom. I think for me personally, my philosophy has always been to leave people, places, and things better than I found them. And I just wish that was every person in the HR space's philosophy. You know, if you can leave somebody something around you just better than you found it, I think the world would just be a better place. I think that's obviously very optimistic, but that is my philosophy.
Stunning. Beautiful. I love that philosophy. Keep running it out. I know it's on your LinkedIn profile as well. Prashanti Mundree, thank you so much for your time. Huge appreciation. Going to be a couple of days, maybe later in the week, we put out the recording. I'll make sure you're tagged on it and share it with the powers that be and say, hey, there's some stuff going on here. Wake up or become insignificant.
Love that. Thanks so much, Tim. It was a pleasure.